start with a couple quick comments. It was described that directional bores to go below 8 feet are ruled out. That was the reason the College Avenue line was ruled out. There's a directional bore 10 feet on the current route. I know that because it's in my yard. So they are doing directional bores, and they are going below 8 feet on the line that they have proposed here. In addition, waivers have been granted. You were asking about waivers, and there are situations in which waivers have been granted. So just to answer those two questions. Sorry? Yes, they're not set up yet. So in normal project planning, the party that makes the decision bears the benefits and the costs. For example, a line that went through Penn State property, the costs and the benefits would be borne by the party ultimately making the decision. It really is the customer who is always right and makes the decision on these things. They can say no if they don't like a route. We won't do the job. That's not the situation that we have. We have the beneficiary in one place, and we have a significant part of the cost being borne somewhere else. Now, the cost can actually be quantified in certain ways. There have been studies of reduction in property values due to proximity to pipelines. This is a pipeline that has some problems out west, and you can see that there's, by proximity to the pipeline, there's a reduction in the values of the house. This is an academic study that was performed by Hansen et al. Now, there have been other studies that claim there is no effect of pipeline proximity on property values. They are all funded or associated with the gas pipeline industry. Here's one of them that I found. It claims long-term value effects are not readily observable in the results of Hansen. That's what I had on the previous page. This is the graph of long-term value effects. It shows in a month since the accident that actually happened on that pipeline at one point. After 4 years, you can see a clear suppression in the value, and that's not asymptoting up to the baseline. So that statement is simply false. And that would call into question anything that was said in this particular study. This is another one with very weak methodology, has a very strange matched pair method, and they do not actually present more than a small fraction of their data. They cite Hansen et al., but they make no reference to it whatsoever in the text. This one claims to be a review of the literature on suppression of property values near pipelines. It does not cite Hansen et al. It came out at least a year or two afterwards. In fact, the one above does cite it, although it doesn't say anything about it. That came out a year earlier. So this review is obviously incomplete. Finally, I found a fourth study. This one, the quality of the PDF on the journal website is so low, the figures are illegible. So I'm unable to assess the validity of this one. But the other three, all funded or associated with the gas industry. The right-of-way motto is in service of the right-of-way industry is the motto of that magazine. They all have methodological flaws or make false claims. The other one is an academic study. Is this a rational reduction in property values? Is it associated with any actual data, any actual events? This is a list of gas pipeline major accidents last year, just 2012. They don't all fit on one slide. So here's some more of them. And you can look through here. I won't spend the time on it. Basically, explosion, 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 explosion. Here's the third page of them. And the one in bold is our people. That's Columbia Gas. That's their pipe. And that's 4 months ago. That's in December. It's in West Virginia, a 20-inch pipe. Blue, I'm sure that was described as safe in any hearings that they had at that point. And I'm sure they had nice words to say to describe why it was safe. The control room did not sound an alarm when that pipeline blew. And it went for an hour before they could shut it off. The gas ran for an hour. It burned 800 feet of freeway. Oh, sorry, that's the number of accidents. This is what it looked like. That's I-77 that you're seeing there, and you're seeing the flame from the pipe. It's a bigger pipe. It's a 20-inch pipe. It's probably transmission, not distribution, but I'm sure it was described as safe. But you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take Wikipedia's word for it. You can take the word of Penn State and the Borough, because they have described that an engineering criterion in siting the line is safety, reducing risk. Well, you don't use that as a criterion in an engineering design unless it's a significant risk. If it was insignificant, you wouldn't be using that as a criterion. Foster is a disaster waiting to happen, according to Mr. Whitfield. Right? So can't do it there, significant risk. Right? Does the risk automatically become insignificant on the magic route? That seems unlikely. Sounds like there would be a significant risk. What is that risk? It can be quantified. This is a study of the radius. These things have to be defined. This is the radius at which a wooden structure will spontaneously catch fire. It doesn't have to be touched by a flame. The simple radiant heat is enough to take it down. And somebody outside will get a burn in 30 seconds if they don't run away fast enough. That's the particular criterion. If you extrapolate down for this pipe, it's 165 feet. There's the route. That's 165 feet roughly around it. Now keep in mind, that's just spontaneous combustion. That's, you can catch fire outside that range pretty easy if something burning touches you, right? Of course, it's not the entire route that goes up, right? If there's a localized failure, you're going to get some sort of zone like that. So everything in there is completely wiped out if you have a breach of the pipeline. And things outside that are probably also at risk. So you can sort of slide that around. That's my house. You can imagine that area, some wider area. These things are harder to define exactly because, of course, the damage extension depends on the conditions in the situation. But you could imagine a width like this. This is actually conservative compared to some estimates. Those are the people who are supposed to put it out. That's where the pipe goes. Right there. There's another view of it. My daughter Ellie likes to walk down that path when she comes home from school. So there we go. There's a benefit, there's a cost. Penn State did a lot of studies. We heard about them. They balanced benefits and costs. They did a lot of accounting. I didn't hear anything about accounting for the cost to the community. Rough estimates of reduction in property value are very big numbers. They are definitely comparable to the numbers you were hearing from Penn State earlier. Same basic ballpark. Haven't had time to do it in detail, but you're talking 7 or 8 figures, essentially, reduction in property value along that line. I don't know if anybody wanted to buy my house. My house was the one you saw in that picture there. And Penn State, essentially, by not internalizing that cost, is forcing somebody else to pay the bills. Right? That's a cost. That's a real cost. That is dollars. There's risk and there's dollars. There's both. Right? There's real cost, real dollars. Not in the book. Somebody else is paying. Make them pay. Right? Why not? You can do it. This is Rod's promise to the community at a very dark hour in Penn State's history. Penn State is committed to transparency, dialogue with students, faculty, alumni, and the community. Do the right thing. Meet not only the law's standard, but Penn State's standard. Now, this public meeting in October, I talked to the borough engineer. I came in because I had some questions about some deeds. And my impression I got there was that was not the idea of Columbia Gas to have that meeting. There was a claim here that they're big fans of those things. Why was that meeting called with 2 days' notice to the public? That must have come because, hey, this thing's going to get voted on at a trustees meeting. Borough, interest of the community in mind, says, we got to get a meeting out. Right? Why would you call a meeting like that with 2 days' notice unless something happened on very short notice, suddenly something was sprung on you, and there had to be an act? I didn't open my mail for a couple days. I literally did not open that envelope until after the meeting had passed. I am not the only one. And in any case, that was days before the Board of Trustees was going to vote. No one can tell me, honestly, that meeting was designed to get input into the decision-making process. Absolutely not. There's no way, after several years of discussion, a meeting at that date is designed to have any significant or meaningful input into the decision-making process. It is window dressing. The meeting in March, even more so, a few weeks before the project is supposed to start. This is not public consultation. This is not dialogue. This is monologue.
Excuse me, how much longer?
I'm almost done. I've been going 9 minutes. They went over quite a bit, actually.
That's true, although I called everyone on 10 minutes, which you are doing.
Well,
I'm sure that you'll have some minutes to...
Well, I'm about to wrap up. So this is a question for Rod and a question for Penn State. I invited Rod. He was busy tonight, so he couldn't come. I sent him a recording of some of the slides, so hopefully he's had a chance to see. I told him he was on the last slide. So Penn State wants to live up to its aspirations. They might need a little encouragement to do that. And just to wrap up, out of 1,700 or so pipeline operators nationwide, if you look in the database, Columbia Gas Transmission is number 2 in terms of the number of federal enforcement actions. And if you look at the study that you commissioned, which lists the number of fatalities from pipelines and injuries, it says this should be compared against a national population of 300 million. That is invalid and deceptive statistics, because not everybody lives on a pipeline, and most of these pipelines are in uninhabited areas. The way you should think about that is, if you want a proper assessment of the effective risk there, you would say, okay, let's imagine all these pipelines are populated. Ours is, right? That's the way to get the risk. Well, if they're all populated and you have 30 major explosions a year, you're going to kill a whole lot more people than that, right? It'd be in the hundreds, not in the tens, which is what the number quoted in the study that you commissioned is. And then you don't compare that with 300 million, because even if you populated all those pipelines notionally, you don't have 300 million people living on them. And that's a second factor. I don't know how big those factors are. I only had a couple hours since this was posted. But I would imagine if you did that, if I just took a guess, and like I said, no time to really do this, I imagine that would actually translate into an effective fatality rate of thousands per year, not tens. If you did the legitimate comparison, not the one that your commissioned study by a former employee of Columbia Gas and iSource has quoted. And in fact, I think this is the reason why pipelines are anomalously dangerous. Most accidents are in the middle of nowhere, so there's not a whole lot of public pressure to do anything about it. Compared to commercial aviation, right? How many accidents in the past year? Commercial aviation, major accidents. It's been 0 for several of the previous years. They got a whole lot more moving parts than pipelines, I would imagine. I haven't counted. They probably do. But those accidents get noticed. Everybody thinks they fly. There's a lot of public pressure, right? Most of these don't. They happen in the middle of nowhere. They go boom. Nobody gets hurt because there's nobody there. We got some people on top of this one. Thank you.
Swart. Mr. Swart.